Hello everyone, this is my first video about World of Warcraft Classic. I'm playing World of Warcraft Classic Hardcore on my level 50 Holy Paladin. I'm playing solely as a healer, and I also like some number crunching and going in depth into some mechanics of World of Warcraft Classic, and this is exactly what we will do in this video. So we will talk about how does the Paladin work in World of Warcraft Classic as a healer, of course, only from a healer perspective. We will also look at what does Intellect do for us as a healer, what does spell power do for us as a healer, is Spirit any good for us, and why should we downrank spells, what is downranking, and also to make the video even more exciting, I have the following problem. My glove spot is not occupied right now, and the reason is in the last bag, I should say, I have two different gloves. Gloves of vehicle, which are male, and gloves of healing, which are cloth. And in this video I want to decide on which gloves should I put on for healing purposes only. So of course the gloves of vehicle, they have stamina and they have more armor, and this is quite good for survivability, especially in hardcore, but this will not be the focus of the video. The focus of the video will be to compare them in a solely healing scenario, which is actually how I play this character. I never play this character on his own. I'm always in a group and I'm always the healer. And to compare these two gloves, I also wrote a Python script which quantizes the effects of Intellect and the effects of bonus healing in a good comparable way with several metrics to them. And if you are interested in the Python script, I won't go over how it works in this video in detail, but just let me know in the comments, then I might do a follow-up video where I go over the Python script in more detail, how it works, and I even might upload it somewhere if it is wanted. Just let me know in the comments. And also for this video I want to mention an add-on. It is called Extended Character Stats, and it generates this button at the bottom right corner of my character window, and if I click it and click it again, it toggles. So let's toggle it on, and now we have an additional stats window to the right of our character window, which displays many more stats we would not be able to see in World of Warcraft Classic. And this will come in handy for this video too. So just to mention it right from the beginning. The main stats we are interested in are bonus healing, of which I have 115 right now, due to my equipment. So for example, my waist has plus 40 bonus healing, my cape has plus 20 bonus healing, and so on. All in all, they add up to 115. And the second stat we are interested in is my holy crit chance, which is 11.38%. So I have 11.38% with holy spells to crit. And since all my healing spells are holy spells, I have 11.38% to crit with my healing spells. Whenever I crit with a healing spell, the spell does heal for 1.5 times the value it would have healed if it would not have crit. And also, because I'm a Holy Paladin, I have a very strong talent called Illumination. And this talent makes it such that whenever I crit with one of my healing spells, I get refunded 100% of the mana cost of that spell. So we can say in a way this talent makes it such that our crit chance reduces the mana cost of our spells by the same amount the crit chance itself is. So with a crit chance of 11.38%, we can say my spells are on average 11.38% less mana costly. So they cost on average 11.38% less mana. Why can we say that? Well, whenever I crit, I get the mana back, and I crit 11.38% of the time. But over the long run, this is equivalent to say that every spell just costs 11.38% less mana. Yeah. So now let's talk about Intellect at first. What does Intellect do for my healing? Every point of Intellect increases my mana by 15 points. And also it increases my crit chance by some amount. My spell crit chance, to be clear. And therefore also my holy crit chance. Now, by how much does it increase my crit chance? There is a formula that works well for level 60 characters, but actually I haven't found any formula for characters with other levels than level 60. So if any one of you has a formula for that, I'll gladly take it. So please, if you have it, just post it in the comments somewhere. So what I do, since I do not have a formula for level 50, for example, I equip some piece of armor that has some intellect on it, like these glass of eagle, which have 9 intellect. And when I equip it, I look at how much my intellect stat changes and how much my crit changes, and the change in crit divided by the change in intellect gives me how much crit I get per intellect. And this is exactly what we will do right now. So I will equip them. I have 144 intellect right now. Now I equip the gloves of eagle and I have 154 intellect right now. So I gained 10 intellect. And I also gained 0.2 crit, because I was at 11.38 and now I'm at 11.58, so I gained 0.2% crit. 0.2% crit over 10 intellect, what I gained. So that means I gain 0.02% crit per intellect. So now I have the value. I don't know a formula, but I just figured it out this way. And if you are wondering why I did gain 10 intellect, although the gloves only give 9 intellect, this is due to another powerful talent of the Holy Paladin, which is this talent in the first row, which increases my intellect stat by 10%. So when I equip gloves with 9 intellect, I actually get 9.9 intellect, and since I already have some other equipment equipped that also give quite a bit more intellect, there might have been some fraction of an intellect already in the background, and now with this fraction of 0.9 it does make up for another point of intellect, so I get 10 intellect instead of 9. Okay, so now unequip it again. Now we have talked about intellect, and the next thing I want to talk about is spirit, although I will go over it very, very briefly, because we will see later on that spirit is not really a good stat for our healing paladin. So spirit does give us mana back over time, which seems good, but there is some problem with we play our Paladin, so that Spirit is not really that good for us. Because the way Spirit gives mana back is that there's a server-wide tick every 2 seconds. And whenever such a tick occurs, whenever a character is not considered casting, then it will get some mana back depending on how much spirit they have. But there was this if clause in it, if it is not considered casting. And this is the problem, because to be not considered casting, you need to not have cast any spell within the last 5 seconds. And we will see later that as a healing paladin, you will be spamming Flash of Light most of the time, so you will be considered casting most of the time. So most of the time you will not get any mana through your spirit. And this is why spirit is a rather weak stat for a holy paladin. Now there's a formula for how much spirits you get back, how much mana you get back due to spirit, but I won't go over it in detail here because, as I said, spirit is not really that interesting to us as a holy paladin. So let's now go over the biggest aspect of this video, the mechanic of bonus healing. How does bonus healing affect our healing? Now, as I already said, we have 115 bonus healing, and one assumption we could make is that these 115 are applied to every heal we do, and we can test that. So, for example, we can use Flash of Light rank 1. Why do I use Flash of Light rank 1? Well, I use it because it has the lowest range, and therefore we can be the most accurate about our assumption. So it has a range from 75 to 87. Now let's assume we would just apply the whole 115 bonus healing to it. Then it should do 190 to 202. Let's test it. We will ignore crits if any crit occurs, because then we have to divide by 3, multiply by 2 to get the non-crit value, but we just ignore it. It's easier. So the first heal was 130. The second is 128, 135, 135. So, as we see, our assumption seems to be false. We do way less healing than we assumed. And the reason is it's a bit more complicated than that. And there are several factors that come into play. I divided up into 3 factors, although there is in some way a 4th factor, but it usually is used interchangeably with the first factor. So it depends on what kind of spell you're using, if you use the first factor or the 4th factor, and then in each case you would use the other 2 factors. But the other 2 factors might also just be one for many spells, and we will get over that. So the first factor I want to introduce is the cast time multiplier. Let's call him that. And it works the following. You just need to divide the cast time of your spell in this case 1.5 seconds because we use flash of light, by 3.5 seconds. So these 3.5 seconds, it's just a constant that works for all spells. You have to divide the cast time of the spell through that constant. And whatever you get then, you cap it at 1. So if you would use a spell which has a longer cast time than 3.5 seconds, you would just get 1 as a result of the division. Now, let's do this. So let's calculate what our value would be or should be if this assumption was true and if this would be the only factor. So let's see. We divide 1.5 seconds, the cast time of our flash of light, by 3.5 seconds. And we get a value of 0.428 and so on. Now this is the first factor and we multiply it with our 115 bonus healing. So we get around 50 bonus healing. Let's just say we get 49 bonus healing. So 49 to 50 to account for some rounding. In that case, we would do somewhere between, let's say, 124, so 49, to 137, so 50. So let's just be a bit lenient on the range because there might be some rounding. Let's test it. So 124 to 137, 128, 126, 125, 134, 126, 126, 124. So yeah, it seems to be true. Like, it's not a definite proof, but there was no cost that resulted in a value out of that rather small range. And now I said we divide the cast time of the spell by 3.5. I usually even say we divide the base cast time of the spell, which is important. So you should divide the base cast time of the spell, not necessarily the cast time of the spell. What I mean by that is some classes have talents with which they can reduce the cast time of some spells. And they also might have some haste. But with base cast time, I mean the cast time without considering talents and without considering haste. Since I do not have any talents to reduce the cast time of Flash of Light or Holy Light or any of my spells really, and I also do not have any haste, the base cast time is just the cast time. But if there would be in some way or another a difference in cast times, then always use the base cast time, so the cast time without considering talents or haste. Now this is the first multiplier. Now I already mentioned a fourth multiplier, which I want to talk about right now, because it sometimes replaces the first multiplier depending on the spell. So if your spell is an instant spell that applies a dot, or so a damage over time effect on your target, or it is an instant spell that applies a healing over time effect on your target, then you would not use the first multiplier, instead you use the fourth multiplier. And this is the reason I'm talking about the force multiplier right now. So the force multiplier, I call him the hot dot multiplier. So very descriptive. You use him for hot and dots. How does he work? Well, when you apply a hot or dot, then the hot or dot has a duration. Now this duration you need to divide by 15 seconds to get your hot dot multiplier. But again, also this multiplier is capped at 1. So if your hot dot has a duration longer than 15 seconds, it just stays at 1. So for an example, before I played this Paladin, I played a priest, and the priest had renew, which was a 15-second hot. So if I do the math, 15 seconds divided by 15 seconds is 1. So I get the full bonus healing on my renew, but over the course of all ticks. And since renew has a 15-second duration and it ticks every 3 seconds, there are 5 renew ticks. And each of the 5 renew ticks now gets 20% of my bonus healing added to it. So that in the end I get exactly 100% of the bonus healing as the multiplier suggested. But if I had a hot that would only be 12 seconds of duration, then 12 seconds divided by 15 seconds would be 0.8. So over the course of its durations, over the course of its 4 ticks in that case, I would only apply 80% of my bonus healing. But 80% divided by 4 ticks again ends up in 20% per tick. It just is a tick less, and therefore not all bonus healing is applied. But there might be cases where you don't just get a flat 20% per tick. Whenever your duration is 15 seconds or less, yes, the formula turns out to always give you 20% per tick. But in the cases where the duration is longer than 15 seconds, this is not the case. So for example, let's say I have a hot that is 18 seconds long in duration. Then I divide 18 seconds by 15 seconds and get some value above 1. But as I said, the multiplier is capped at 1. So I actually get just 100% of my healing bonus. But now over the course of 6 ticks, because it's 18 seconds long. And therefore every tick only gets a 16.6 periodic % of my healing bonus. So this is it to the hot dot multiplier and the cast time multiplier. Now you might be wondering, why did it work with Flash of Light? Why did we already get the correct values when there's 2 more multipliers? Well, this is due to the fact that the multipliers, of course, are depending on which spells you are using, and it just happens to be that the Flash of Light I used is a spell where the second and third multiplier turns out to be 1, and therefore don't change anything. But now we will go over the next 2 multipliers. Actually, there's one more case I want to cover before we go to the second multiplier, and this is about instant spells. So if you have an instant spell that does instant damage or healing, then for the purpose of the cast time multiplier, it's considered to have a cast time of 1.5 seconds. The reason, at least as I can explain it to myself, is that whenever you use an instant spell, you usually trigger global cooldown, which is 1.5 seconds, and therefore for the purpose of the cast time multiplier, the spell is considered to have a cast time of 1.5 seconds, since it locks you out of casting other spells for 1.5 seconds. Now let's talk about the second multiplier, and for that we will do a test. Let's open up a spellbook again and look at Holy Light rank 1. It does healing from 47 to 57. Now let's apply the first multiplier and assume it would be the only multiplier. What values would we expect? For that we will use the calculator again. So we have a cast time of 2.5 seconds and we divide that by 3.5 seconds to have a modifier of 0.71. Now we multiply that with our healing bonus of 115 and we get a bonus healing on the casts of our Holy Light of 82.14. Let's just say 82. So if this would be the only multiplier, then we should see values when casting the spell between 47 plus 82, so 129, and 139. So let's test it. 80, 80, 77, 79. So clearly, again, our values are way lower than we initially expect them to be. And the reason is that the second multiplier is not 1 for this spell. And the second multiplier, I call him the low-level malus multiplier. Low-level malus multiplier because it is a malus for low-level spells. And the formula for the second multiplier, the low-level malus multiplier, is as follows. Let's just clear the calculator. Now I will show the formula for the second, the low-level malus multiplier. It is 1 minus 3 divided by 80, and this part is always the same, but then this 380 you multiply it by something, and this something, this depends on the spell in question. And for that we will need to clarify what the level of a spell is. The level of a spell is the level at which you learn the spell at your trainer. So it's not the rank of a spell, it's the level at which you learn it at the trainer. Now, Holy Light rank 1, I think you have it from the start. You don't even need to go to any trainer to learn it. I think, I'm not 100% sure, but pretty sure. And in that case, it's just level 1. You have it since level 1, so it is level 1. Now, this level is important because now we need to do some math. We need to subtract the level of our spell from 20. So 20 minus the level of our spell. Well, 20 minus, in our case, 1 is just 19. And this 19 is now the value that we multiply here with the 380s. So I do that. And now this is the low-level malus multiplier for our Holy Light rank 1. Also, this multiplier cannot exceed 1. At level 20, this would be 0, these 19 would be 0, and so we would subtract 0 from 1, which is just 1. So at level 20 spells, this low-level malus multiplier would be exactly 1. And now for levels above level 20, this formula would exceed 1, but again, the low level malus multiplier is also kept at 1. So it will never be a bonus for high level spells. It is only a malus for low level spells. Now let's multiply this multiplier with our already known cast time multiplier for the Holy Light, which is 2.5 divided by 3.5. Now we have a combined multiplier of about 20.5%. Now we multiply that with a healing bonus of 115. Now we get 23.61. So about 24 or 23 will be added to every cast of our Holy Light. If that is the case, then we should only see values between, let's say, 70 to 81. Let's test that. $75, $72, $71, $79. Let's ignore crits. 79, 76. So our test shows that at least in our test all costs were in the expected range. So that's pretty much all we need to know about the second multiplier. Now let's talk about the third multiplier, the last multiplier we need to cover. And I call him the AoE multiplier, and it's a very simple one. Whenever your cast is some kind of AoE spell, so AoE damage or AoE healing, then the multiplier is 1/3, and if it's a single targeted spell, then the multiplier is 1. This is the reason why it was 1 for Holy Light as well as Flash of Light. Now, as a Paladin, I do not have the ability to give you an example of this multiplier, but I know from my times as a priest that prayer of healing, and let's just use the calculator again, prayer of healing on a priest is an AoE spell which heals everyone in a range of 30 meters, and it has a cast time of 3 seconds. So it has 3.0 divided by 3.5 as first multiplier, the cast time multiplier. And now if there would not be any third multiplier, so if there would not be any AoE multiplier, then this would just be the multiplier which I have to multiply my bonus healing with. But I noticed that the bonus healing applied to my prayer of healing was very much lower, and I did some testing and figured out that it seems to be that only 1/3 of what should be applied if there was no AoE multiplier was really applied. And to give some intuition of what that means, whenever you use an AoE spell on 3 mobs, just as much bonus healing is applied, or bonus damage is applied, than it would be if you would use a same cast on a single target which is not a AoE cast but has the same cast time. But whenever you use an AoE spell on less than 3 targets, then it is less as efficient from a bonus healing perspective or bonus damage perspective than an equivalent single target spell. And if you use an AoE spell on more than 3 targets, then it's even more efficient than an equivalent single target spell, considering the bonus damage or bonus healing. Now, at last, I also want to mention 2 exceptions. Well, actually, one exception I know for sure, and another maybe exceptions where I just think it's very likely an exception, but I never tested it myself. Now, the first exception that I know for sure is with Power Word Shield of the Priest. You could see it 2 ways. You could see it the way that Power Word Shield does not heal, it just applies a shield and therefore should not benefit from any bonus healing. Or you could see it the way that Power Word Shield is like a heal and therefore should benefit normal from bonus healing. Well, if you are in the first category, then well, the bonus healing applied should just be 0. And if you're in the second category, then you might think that since Power Word Shield is an instant spell, and instant spells are considered to have a cast time of 1.5 seconds for the purpose of the cast time multiplier, it should get 3/7, so 1.5 divided by 3.5, so 3/7 of the bonus healing you have, applied as additional shield value through your absorption value of your Power Word Shield. But actually, neither one is true. In reality, Power Word Shield does get some bonus from bonus healing, but the bonus is 0.1 times your bonus healing. So rather low, but not 0. Why that is the case, I cannot answer. It is just this way. And the second exception that might not be an exception, but I'm pretty sure there will be some exception in some way, is with the druid spell. I think it's called Regrowth, that you cast, then it does instant healing and it also applies a hot, so a healing over time effect on the target. Well, I think there might be some exception going on because this spell does many things in one, so I would not be surprised if there's some custom solution to that spell. But as I said, I never tested it. What I just want to show is that there might very well be exceptions to the rule. And now I just got kicked, but I'll be back. Now, with all these mechanics in mind, we will figure out how to play our class. How should we heal as a Holy Paladin? We have 2 main spells we could use for healing. We have Flash of Light with various ranks, which is a 1.5 second cast time heal, which costs very little mana and heals rather little. And we have Holy Light, which is a 2.5 second cast time heal, which costs way more mana and heals way more. Now, which of these 2 spells should I use? Well, we should use Flash of Light. And we should use it because it is more mana efficient, way more mana efficient than Holy Light. Now, why is that the case? Well, we can do some calculations. Now, let's first do the calculations without any bonus healing in mind, as if we had no bonus healing. Let's look at Flash of Light rank 1. It costs 35 mana and heals for 75 to 87. Well, so on average it heals for 81. So let's divide 81 by 35. 81 divided by 35. And we get 2.31. So for every point of mana we spend on Flash of Light rank 1, we heal the target for 2.31. And this is not considering any bonus healing. We will come to that later. Now let's look at Flash of Light rank 2 and just keep that value somewhere in the back of your mind. There we have to divide, well, so the average value of this spell is 122.5. So 122.5 divided by 50. So 2.45. So even a bit more mana efficient than the first rank. And now just let's go with the next rank, which has an average value of 181.5. And we have to divide by 70. And we have 2.59. So even more mana efficient than the previous rank. Now let's go with Holy Light. So when we want to know which spell should we use, then we should look at Flash of Light and Holy Light. So let's just go with Holy Light. Well, we have the first rank of Holy Light heals on average for 52 and costs 35 mana. So 52 divided by 35. Which is 1.48, so way lower than our Flash of Light. Now the second rank is on average heals 99 and it costs 60 mana. So 99 divided by 60. 1.65. A bit better, but still way much lower than the Flash of Light mana efficiency. Now let's go with the third rank. We have an average value of, well, 30, 32, 16, so 203. Average value of 203 divided by 110. 103 divided by 110. So even higher, but still way lower than the mana efficiency of Flash of Light. So this is one way to show why Flash of Light is generally more mana efficient than Holy Light. But as I said, we did not consider any bonus healing yet. But not considering bonus healing, Flash of Light would be more mana efficient. But what we also saw is that higher ranks get more mana efficient when we do not consider bonus healing. And that seems kinda counterintuitive, well, not counterintuitive, but there's often talked about downranking spells for efficiency, and now we see that the higher ranks are more efficient than the lower ranks. And the reason for that is the very big if that I put prior to all of that, if we would not consider bonus healing. When we consider bonus healing, everything changes. And to be clear, everything changes even more in favor of Flash of Light than in favor of Holy Light. And also everything changes in favor of lower ranks instead of higher ranks. So normally the higher ranks are more mana efficient, but with much bonus healing, suddenly the lower ranks become more mana efficient. And also the division between the mana efficiency of Flash of Light compared to the mana efficiency of Holy Lights gets even bigger. And why is that the case? Well, we know already the mechanics, and the only mechanics we have to look at, considering we are using spells above level 20 that are single target, which are all the spells we will ever use as a Holy Paladin, then the only multiplier we need to look at is the cast time multiplier, and it is very simple. We divide the cast time by 3.5. So this is a multiplier that grows linear with the cast time. So what I want to say by that is Flash of Light has a cast time of 1.5 seconds, and a Holy Light has a cast time of 2.5 seconds. 1.5 to 2.5, so 1.5 divided by 2.5 is just 60%. So the Flash of Light has 60% the modifier the Holy Light has. So 60% of bonus healing we get on Holy Light, we get on Flash of Light. But if you compare the mana costs, then Holy Light is way more expensive than Flash of Light. So Flash of Light costs way less mana than 60% of the mana of Holy Light. And therefore, the more bonus healing you have, the better it is to use cheap spells compared to their bonus healing multiplier they get. And their Flash of Light is literally unbeatable. And by unbeatable, I mean unbeatable by any class. And this makes Pala healers so extremely mana efficient. They have an extremely cheap spell, which has a 1.5 second cast time and therefore an almost 50% bonus healing multiplier. As I said, extremely cheap spell for almost 50% bonus healing multiplier. No one can beat us. No other class. In a way, you could see it as how much mana do I have to pay to get some amount of my bonus healing applied to my spell. And as I already said several times now, Flash of Light is unbeatable in that case, because it's so very cheap. And also, as Paladin, I have a blessing called Blessing of Light. With level 50, I just got my second rank, and what it does is the following. If Blessing of Light is applied to a target, and that target gets healed by Holy Light or Flash of Light, I gain additional, so the Holy Light and the Flash of Light do additional healing. And in fact, the rank 2 of Blessing of Light that I just got with level 50 increases the healing done by my Holy Light by 300 and by my Flash of Light by 85, which is huge. So these values, the 300 and the 85, they do not be multiplied with the healing bonus multiplier. It just will be added as a flat value on top after calculating bonus through bonus healing and so on. The only thing is that in some way still very low level spells don't get applied the full value. But if you use spells above level 20, then the full value is applied. And we can test that. We can test it with Holy Light. So let's just use Holy Light rank 1. If it would apply the full 300, well then we should see values well above 300. Now let's test that. Not the case, not the case at all. But if we use Flash of Light, which is Flash of Light rank 1, which I learned at level 20, then the full 85 will be applied, and we can calculate it in before and look as we always do. So what would we have here? So we have 7, oh well, I don't think we even need to calculate anymore, I have it in my head still. So we have 75 to 87, so we have a range from, yeah, let's say 125 to 132, 137, 125 to 137. And then I add the 85 to it. So 110 to 210 to 222, I think. Let's, yeah, 210 to 222. Let's see if that's the case. 210, so that was a low roll. 210 to 16 to 10. Well, let's ignore that one. To 19 to 20. So we are in that range. So as you can see, with the only exception of using very low level spells, Blessing of Light really applies the full 85 or 300, depending on which spell you are using. And this makes Flash of Light even much more potent than it already was, because again, we don't have to spend any mana, nearly any mana, like it is very, very cheap, and still get 85 more healing out of it. So this is the very reason we downrank spells and we use Flash of Light. And there's one more thing. We were talking about Spirit very, very briefly, because I said we will be considered casting most of the time. Now that seems clear to us now too. Why that is the case? Well, it's the case because we want to heal mana efficient, and by healing mana efficient we need to use Flash of Light. But Flash of Light doesn't heal for much, so we have to heal all the time. And this is the very reason we are considered casting most of the time in combat, and therefore won't profit from any 2-second server-wide ticks with regards to our spirit. One question that might also arise is, why do I have various ranks of Flash of Light on my action bar? Why don't I always use the most mana efficient rank of Flash of Light? And to answer that question, let's assume I would just do that. I would only ever use the most mana efficient rank of Flash of Light. In that case, I would only ever use Flash of Light rank 1. And why that is not always a good option, we can see when we consider two metrics. The first metric is the HPM metric, so the health healed per mana spent metric. This is a very important metric because it also tells us how much healing we can output in total until we are out of mana and therefore can't cast any more spells. And if this were the only metric we need to worry about, then indeed we should only ever cast Flash of Light rank 1, since it's the most mana efficient spell we have. But there's a second metric. I call it the HPS metric, the health healed per second metric. So assuming we are spamming our spell, how much health do we heal per second? And this metric is also very important, because let's consider a dungeon scenario where we have to heal the tank. Now the tank takes some damage, and we can just assume there's some underlying DPS the tank takes. Now, if a HPS is lower than the DPS the tank takes, then slowly the tank will die. And this is, of course, to be avoided. So we should always pick a rank which is the most mana efficient under all ranks that have the ability to keep the tank alive. So under all ranks that have a HPS tied to them, which is not less than the DPS the tank takes. And therefore we sometimes have to just use higher ranks. A general rule is that with every rank you go up in Flash of Light, you trade some HPM for some HPS, and you will go up just as much ranks, so your HPS is greater or equal than the DPS the tank takes. And this is now your most mana efficient spell you need to cast in order to keep your tank alive. Now, then there's also another question about when would I use Holy Light. Well, Holy Light is much less mana efficient, so the HPM of Holy Light is much lower than the HPM of Flash of Light. But it is even more HPS heavy, so it does way more HPS than Flash of Light. And in scenarios where the whole group takes damage or there is massive damage on the tank, then you can use Holy Light to top everyone off, or top the tank off in really damage intensive encounters. And in that case I also like to use some talent I have, and I will show it right now. It's this talent. This talent is an activated ability with a 2-minute cooldown, and when I activate it, then the next cast of my Holy Light or Flash of Light is 100% to be a crit. And this combined with the illumination talent we have means that the next cast is not only a crit, but it also does not cost any mana. So in encounters where I have to use a Holy Light, I like to combine it with this activated ability to make it a no mana cost Holy Light that crits, which does very big amounts of healing for no mana spent. But for the most part I'm good with healing with various ranks of Flash of Light. I very seldom need to use Holy Light. One last thing I want to talk about before we go to our Python script is the following talent. I think it's called Healing Light in English, but I'm not sure. But either way, it increases the healing we do with our Flash of Light and Holy Light spells by 12%. Now you might wonder why we never used in any of our calculations a factor of 1.12, which would account for these 12%. The reason we didn't do this is the following. When you look at the text here, for example for our Holy Light, when you look at the text, then there's the value displayed it will heal, which does not include bonus healing. But it already includes these 12%. So if you put points into this talent, then this text will update and will display a bigger number. And the number will be exactly 12% bigger than it was before with 3 points in this talent. So this is the reason why we don't need to apply to the flat healing this spell provides without bonus healing. And now you might ask, yeah, but there is bonus healing. Doesn't it apply to the bonus healing too? And the answer is no. These 12% do not apply to the bonus healing, and therefore we don't have to multiply them in. What that means is that actually our spells are not really 12% stronger with this talent. They are only 12% stronger with this talent if we had no bonus healing at all. But since we have some bonus healing, and the bonus healing portion of our spell does not get amplified by 12%, we will have healing increased through this talent by less than 12%. But it's still not a bad talent, and especially while leveling, the bonus healing portion of our spell is quite small compared to the bonus healing portion of our spell when we are raiding. So especially when leveling, this talent is not bad at all. At last we will have a look at the Python script I mentioned. We remember that we want to compare these gloves of vehicle with these gloves of healing, and for that we will look at the Python script. Now I won't go into too much detail how the Python script works in this video, but if it's wanted, please let me know in the comments, and I will do a follow-up video where I go more in depth about the workings of the script, and I might even upload it somewhere. In the Python script we have this class called spell, and with this class we will define the spells we have in game. Now spells have the following attributes. They have a name, they have a level, which is important for the low level malus multiplier. They have a min value as displayed in the tooltip in game, a max value as displayed in the tooltip in game, a mana cost, a base cast time, a cast time, a bonus crit chance. So if we had any talents which would increase the crit chance of one or more of our spells, then we would apply them in the bonus crit chance. But as a paladin we don't have any talents which increases the crit chance of some specific spells. A crit multiplier, so by what will crits be multiplied? So for us this is 1.5, because our crits do 1.5 the healing. And for a fire mage, for example, this crit multiplier would be 2.0 if he has the talents that increase their damage of crits. Then there's a bonus spell power. This one is very important for us. This does not mean our spell power, so instead it means the spell power that that is applied through other means, for example through Blessing of Light. Then there's a is AoE flag, which is set to false on default, and if it was true then it would indicate that the spell in question is an AoE spell. There's also a is hot dot flag. If it would be true then this would mean the spell is a hot or a dot. And then there is an SP multiplier. SP stands for spell power multiplier, so this is the multiplier we just calculated prior in this video, which includes all the multipliers we were talking about. And the default value for the SP multiplier is none, and that means that it will be calculated according to the rules I just mentioned earlier in the video. But we can also set it to some fixed value for a given spell. For example, as I mentioned, the power word shield of the priest has a SP multiplier of 0.1. So in that case, we just insert it as 0.1 fixed, and it will not calculate it, it will just take it. And then there's refund on crit value, which is usually 0, which means we do not get refunded on crits. But for us, this value will be 1, which means 100% of the mana cost will be refunded on crit. And if we had, for example, only 2 points in illumination, then we would set this value to 0.4. And these spells are here defined. So here I define the spells we have in-game, and I define every spell I have in-game of Flash of Light. So every rank of Flash of Light will be defined here. And the same goes for Holy Light, except that I only start with Holy Light rank 4, since this is the first rank of Holy Light that is greater than or equal to level 20. Now let's just cast something so we don't get locked out. And then again I will add the same ranks of Flash of Light, but this time where I simulated Blessing of Light rank 2, which grants additional 85 points of bonus healing, is active on the target. And the same goes for the Holy Light ranks I added. I add them again, and also with simulating that Blessing of Light rank 2, which grants 300 points of bonus healing for Holy Light, is active on the target. There's also another class, and this class is called Holy Paladin, and this is where I will define my character. And this class also takes a name, a level, health, mana, MP5. With MP5 is meant how much mana do I get per 5 seconds whenever I am considered casting. So what would that even be on my character? Well, I have this blessing called Blessing of Wisdom, which currently gives me 30 points of mana every 5 seconds. So here I would just enter 30. Then there is the crit chance I have, so my 11.38%. My spell power, so my 115 bonus healing. My spells, this is a list of all the spells I just created at the bottom. The various ranks of Flash of Light and Holy Light. Then crit per int, this is something we did at the beginning or near the beginning of the video, where I equipped it and unequipped the gloves of the eagle to check how much crit I get per int. So here I would enter the 0.02%, although I would enter it not percent but in decimal, so I would enter 0.0002. And this is the int multiplier. This here I would just enter 1.1, and this indicates that I got the talent in the first row that multiplies my intellect by 10%, or that adds 10% on top of my intellect. I should say. And now I created an object of the class here in this line, and I gave the class all the right values according to my in-game character right now. And this long list is the list of spells I mentioned. And this one, this is the 0.0002 I mentioned, and this, as I already said, is the int multiplier, so that my int gets multiplied by 1 times 1.1, since I have the talent in the first row. Now, these 3 lines are what we are interested in now. So when I execute the script, then many things happen. And maybe now let's focus on this thing at first. So this is a graph of a simulation of depletion casting Flash of Light rank 3. Well, why is it depletion casting exactly that rank? That is due to the reason that I entered a 2 here, and so it will make a simulation of a depletion cast of the spell that is third in the list. Third in the list and not second in the list, because the first item in the list has always index 0. So this would be index 0, index 1, index 2, and as we see, it is Flash of Light rank 3. So this line creates a depletion casting simulation of my Flash of Light rank 3. And what do I mean by depletion casting? That means that I will just simulate spamming this cast, this spell, over and over again until I'm And what we see is then this graph, which shows some stats at the top. So there were 59 casts in total, of which 7 crit. It took a total time of 88.5 seconds, which is exactly 1.5 seconds times the amount of casts, which is 59. And it was a total healing done of 13,371. 14,371, I should say. Now the blue line is the cumulative heals, so the heals that accumulate up over the time span of the duration. The orange line, which is here at the bottom, shows the heals individually. So they do around, well, 230 maybe when they do not crit, and around 350 maybe when they do crit, something along this line. So whenever there's a spike, then it means that at that point in time the heal did crit. And when we look at the green line, then the green line shows us our mana over the course of the duration. Of course, at the end our mana is low, so we cannot crit and we cannot heal anymore. That's the reason the simulation ends. And what we also see is that whenever we crit with a spell, then the green line did not deplete further. In this case, it even got up a bit. Well, why does it not deplete further whenever we crit? This is due to our refund on crit, which grants us our mana back. And why did it even go up a bit? This is due to our MP5 which might have, it seems like it ticked at that moment, and since we did a crit also, we even gained in that time span some mana. So this is pretty much all I want to talk about in this graph. So let's close this. And now let's talk about the other two lines. This print spell data line and this simulate batch depletion cost. Let's at first talk about the simulate batch depletion cost. The two again stands in pretty much the same way as in simulate depletion cost for the index of the spell in question, but unlike simulate depletion cost, it does not print out a graph of the depletion cost. Instead, it will simulate 1000 depletion costs of the given spell. And then it will average over these 1000 simulations its values. And these average values are displayed here. So this part is about the batch depletion cost. It starts with batch depletion cost of Flash of Light rank 3, and then it gives us the average values. The average time is 87.528 seconds. The average THO is 14,217.514, and THO stands for total healing output. So how much healing was done in total over one simulation, and this is averaged over the 1000 simulations. Then the average crits we got and the average costs we got. And now let us talk about this line here. In this line, print spell data prints all the data that was calculated for every of our spells included in our spell list. So for every spell in our spell list, a dictionary entry will be created. And all this line does is that it prints out these entries. And we see this here. Whenever there's a line of minuses, this divides different dictionary entries from each other. So whenever there's minuses, then a new entry begins where it is all about a new spell. And if we go to the top, then the first line is always about the name of the spell, so that we know about what spell is it in this entry. Now we will go into the entry in more detail, but let's do it for Flash of Light rank 3, since this is the rank of Flash of Light which I usually use the most. So there's printed out a crit chance, which is just the crit chance of the spell. Then there's printed out the spell power of the spell that is applied to the spell. This is the value we calculated earlier with considering all the multipliers. Then there's N0, N1 and N2. And these three values are number of casts executed given some considerations. Now, N0 means considering that we do not gain any MP5 and considering that we do not get refunded any mana on crits. Then how many spells can we cast of the given spell. And we see it's 44.814, which is just the total mana we have divided by the mana cost of a spell. Now, these values are not integers, so of course it's not possible to cast 0.81 of some spell, but this is just the way it is displayed here. And also these are all theoretical values and not simulated values. This is also the reason why the crit chance is exactly what we have as our character and not some value close to it, which would occur in a simulation. Now, N1 is the number of casts we can cast until we considering that we get mana back through crits, as the spell suggests, but without considering any mana through MP5. And so there we would be able to cast 50.56 spells. And N3 is the value of casts we could cast until we're when we get mana back according to what the spell suggests, and also we get some mana through MP5 as our character suggests. And yeah, then it would be at around 59.15. Now the average value means the average value the spell heals per cast, and this is not only about non-crits, this also includes crits. So given the crit chance I have, the crit multiplier I have, and the bonus healing I have, and maybe even the bonus healing I get through Blessing of Light, and given the text the spell says that this does, what is the average value I will do with a cast, having in mind that some of them might crit, and therefore the value will be a bit higher than the purely average value for non-crits. Then here's the total healing output. I mentioned that earlier. This means when I cast this spell over and over again until I'm with considering everything, so considering MP5 and considering that I get mana back according as the spell suggests, then this is the value I should be able to heal until I'm Here is one of our two metrics, the HPS metric I was talking about earlier. How much HPS does this spell grant me when I spam it? It's 162.6. And the HPM value, which just says how much can I heal with this spell per mana I spent for this spell. This HPM value considers the quote-unquote reduced mana cost through crits that I mentioned earlier in the video, and it does not consider any MP5, so it's not like it's saying, well, the cast is 1.5 seconds, so 3/10 of the MP5 applies while the cast is being cast. This is not considered with this HPM, but the refund on crit, if there is one on the spell, is included in this HPM formula. And to emphasize on that, we can do a calculation. Let's just say we have how much mana do we have? Well, I entered here 3137. This is exactly the mana I have right now in game. And when I use the spell, then I have an HPM of 3.9319. So let's say 3.932. So I could go and say 3037 times 3.9319. And I'm at 12,334. But here stands 14,427. Why is that? When this is my HPM and this here, the 3,137 is my mana, then why don't I add up to the whole 14,427? Well, the reason is, as I just said, it does not consider any MP5 gained. But we can make one more calculation and then it will be clear. So we have 3,137 mana. And here it states that the depletion cost would take 88 seconds. 88.73 seconds. Let's say 88.726 seconds. So we can say we gain some more mana when we consider MP5. And how much more? Well, we have 88.726. And now we divide that by 5 and times 30. This will be our MP5 gained over the course of the duration. And when we add that to the 3,137 mana we have from the beginning, then this is the mana we are using over the course of the full depletion costing. Now let's use this mana and multiply it by the HPM that is displayed here. So 3.9319. Let's do that. 3.9319. And now we are at 14,427, just as the total healing output suggested. So now we are at the right number considering MP5 gained, as my character suggested. Now I want to talk about these 6 lines. These 6 lines will be very important for us. Now let's look at the 6 lines in question. So these lines will be very important for us. Now these lines all start with diff, which indicates some type of difference. Then here's the per, which indicates some quotient. And this indicates the top of the quotient, and this indicates the bottom of the quotient. The top of the quotient is THO, which stands for total healing output, or HPS, which stands for healing per second. And the bottom of the quotient, there we have 3 different values. We have SP, which stands for spell power, or in our case bonus healing. Int, which stands for intellect, and crit percent, which stands for crit percent. So there are some types of armors that have an effect like increases your chance to crit by 1%. Then this is meant by that. Of course, int also increases our crit, but this increase in crit is incorporated into this line where we look at THO per int, for example. Now, what does this line, for example, say? It says that with our current stats, when we would increase our SP, so our bonus healing, by 1, how much would our total healing output increase? And it's 26.79. And the same goes for this line in a similar manner, although we don't look at what is if we increase our SP by 1. Instead we look at what if we increase our int by 1. Also, I have to say that here we are looking at what if we change some equipment so that purely on the equipment itself it states we would have 1 more intellect. So what I mean by that is that this int multiplier, which stands for the talent in the first row I mentioned, is incorporated into this line. So we only have to look at the equipment, how much int it would give us, and then this is an indicator how much our total healing output would increase per int we get on equipment, which is still to be multiplied, but that is happening internally, so we do not have to account for the talent. We just have to make sure that we make the script aware that we have the talent, but then we don't have to account for it anymore because the script does it. Okay, then the third line, well, it just says how much our THO changes per crit percent we get in our current situation. These 2 lines will not be important for us right now because the 2 equipments don't have crit percent. And these 2 lines are about the HPS we get per SP, so per bonus healing, and per int, which are also very important. So in a way we have 2 metrics here now. We have the THO metric and the HPS metric, and we should look at both for SP and for int. Now if we look at the THO metric for SP, then we see it's 26.79. so per SP we gain 26.79 THO, and per int we get 81.61 THO. So about 3 times as much. But if we look inside the game and look at the equipment we want to compare, then we see that the Glass of a Healing have about 3 times more healing than the Glass of Eagle have intellect. Even more like 3.5 times as much. But let's just go with 3 times, it makes it easy for us. And if we need to be more precise, because we figure out that it's very close between the two equipments, then we can get more precise. But let's just go with 3 for the moment. Then we can say that the benefits of the gloves of a healing and the benefits of the gloves of the eagle with respect to THO are pretty much the same, because we just get a third of it for SP than we would get for int, but we get about 3 times more SP than we get int. So they cancel each other out. So then we can look at the second metric, which is also important. And here we see, well, first we realize that the HPS also increases with int. And why is that? Well, the reason is that int does give some amount of crit chance, not much, but it's not 0, and therefore it also increases our HPS. But we see that the increase in HPS per int is way less than the increase in HPS per SP. It's about 1/20th of the increase per SP. And when we then also consider that we have about 3 times more SP on the equipment in question than we have int, then it's more like a ratio of 60:1. So here the clear winner is the class of the healing, because they increase our HPS by about 60 times as much as the class of the eagle. And if I now consider both metrics, well, in this metric they both were about even, then clearly the class of the eagle is the clear winner from a purely healing perspective. Now, of course, the class of the eagle, they have stamina and they have armor, which helps our survivability, which is very important, especially in hardcore. But as I said, I mostly play in groups, or I only play in groups, to be clear, and I seldom take damage myself. And also I want this video to be more about the healing aspect and not about the survivability aspect. So for these reasons I don't value the survivability aspect that highly, and for me the clear winner overall are the gloves of healing. So let's just equip them now. There are some more things I want to show, and for that let's just look at how much bonus healing we have right now. Now with the new class we have 146 bonus healing. So we will just update our script accordingly. So here, where I created my Holy Paladin, I will enter 146 as my spell power now. And then let's just run the script again. And we can close the graph, we don't need it. And now I want to talk about a scenario where we see that increase in the HPS can, in some secondary sense, even have an effect of improving our mana efficiency. and therefore improving our total healing output. And for that, we will look at the following scenario. So as I said earlier, the rank I'm using, or I think I said it earlier, but either way, the rank I'm using most of the time right now is Flash of Light rank 3. And so let's just think of a scenario where this is the case. Let's just say we are in a dungeon and we are healing the tank, and the tank takes about 170 DPS damage. Then with Flash of Light rank 3 we do 171 HPS healing, so this is sufficient. So we would use a Flash of Light rank 3 in this scenario. And we would have a total healing output of 15,258, and our mana efficiency would be 4.15. And now think of the same scenario, but before the encounter I buffed the tank with Blessing of Light rank 2, which is the rank I got with level 50. Then we will have to look further down, where Flash of Light rank 3 is, well, let's see, here. Here is Flash of Light rank 3, while Blessing of Light is on the target, and Blessing of Light rank 2 provides 85 bonus healing on our Flashes of Light. In this case, we have a total healing output of 20,000, which is about 5,000 more than before. So we see that the Blessing of Light is a very, very potent blessing. We also see that our HPS shot up to 231. So from 171 to 231. So it shot up by 60. And also our mana efficiency got up to 5.6. Now all I said is very apparent. Of course, when our heals are stronger, our HPS goes up, our mana efficiency goes up, and our total healing goes up. What I really want to get at is the secondary effect more HPS can have. And this is, when we look at the HPS, we can ask ourselves, well, do I even need to cast that spell now? Or can I even downrank further? And for that we just have to look a rank lower. And indeed, Flash of Light rank 2 with Blessing of Light on the target has an HPS of 190, which is still greater than 170. So in our scenario now I can suddenly just use a rank lower. And if I use Flash of Light rank 2, which I would in this scenario, then I would even have a total healing output of 25,358 and a mana efficiency of 6.4, which is even higher. So this is the secondary effect a higher HPS can have. The secondary effect would be that now we have the possibility to even downrank further. Now there are two more things I want to get at, and for the first we will look at Flash of Light rank 3 again. It is a theoretical total healing output of 15,258. So 15,258. And if we look at the simulated value, if we look at the average of our batch depletion costs, of 1000 depletion costs for our Flash of Light rank 3. Then we see an average THO of 14,978, which is a bit less than 300 points lower than the theoretical value. And why is that? Well, one could say it's just by pure chance, because this is a simulated value, so it just happens to be lower now. But this is actually not the case. This is a simulated value, but it is an average over 1000 depletion costs, so it should be really close to the theoretical value. And also, when I run the script multiple times, then this value will always be around the value it is right now, very close to it, with very little deviation, which is plausible because, as I said, it's an average over 1000 depletion costs, so there is only a tiny deviation. But then what is the reason? Why is this value 200 to 300 points lower than the theoretical value? This is due to the following fact, which I alluded earlier. When the theoretical value is calculated, internally it works with these numbers. Especially it rather only works with the N2 value. And this is a number of casts value, and this number of casts is not an integer, which cannot happen in a simulation. In a simulation there is never a partial cast. But for this theoretical, for these theoretical values, there is some calculation which involves partial casts. So this partial cast of 0.15 appears here, but it would never appear in a simulation. And this partial cast has, in a sense, some partial cast time, which in turn gives some partial MP5, and it also can crit and give some partial mana refunded back, and this all adds up and makes for the slight difference in the theoretical value to the simulated value. But as I said, the difference is rather tiny, and one could ask why I even use partial casts to derive a theoretical value. I use them because it's more clean. It's more clean in a way that if I would not use partial casts, then sometimes when I just change some equip where only one intellect changes, for example, and this intellect happens to do nothing for me because I cannot do another cast, and well, let's face it, the bonus crit I get through the intellect is really tiny. So then the one intellect just amounts to nothing, basically. Nearly nothing. But then other times I change the equipment, and then the one intellect happens to makes me able to cast one cast more. Then this one intellect suddenly is very important. And I don't think this is a good way to just depend on, well, actually at the moment right now this works out to be very effective, but then later after I got one more level and my mana is a bit higher from the get-go, it just doesn't amount to anything anymore. Then I never really know how much my equip does. Whenever anything changes, I have to go through all the equip again to make sure it's good. But with this approach of real numbers with fractions instead of only integers, the comparison of different stats is much more clean, which does not depend on some arbitrary thresholds that only hold for the moment, but after I level up they don't hold anymore and I have to do everything again. So this is the reason why for the theoretical values they work with fractions instead of whole numbers. And the last point I want to bring up is about the MP5 I have. When we go back, well, actually here we can see it too. I entered 30 into my MP5. This is due to my Blessing of Wisdom that I give to myself. So this blessing, it gives me 30 MP5 even when considered casting. As I said, this MP5 value is meant to be the value when I'm considered casting. And there are other ways I can get MP5 while considered casting, and this is through equipment. And so there are types of equipment that just state restores some amount of mana every 5 seconds. These are there is some tiny difference about the MP5 of the equipment to the MP5 of my Blessing of Wisdom, which is almost not noteworthy because the difference is really, really tiny. But I just thought I mention it. The MP5 I get through my Blessing, I get every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds I get 30 mana. But the MP5 that might be on my equipment, of which I have none at the moment, it would work a bit differently. What it would actually do, it would give me 40% of what is stated every 2-second server tick. So it does not give me some mana every 5 seconds, rather it gives me 40% of what it states, but every 2-second server tick, regardless of whether I am considered casting at that moment or not. Yeah, I just wanted to get that out there, and that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in this video. Now, I said it earlier and I'll say it here again. Please let me know in the comments if you want to see more. Maybe you want to see even gameplay of me healing in a dungeon. Then please just let me know. And also, if you want to see more of the Python script, then also just let me know in the comments. Then I will do a more in-depth video about how the Python script works, and I might even upload it somewhere. Yeah, and one question to you, maybe one can answer it in the comments, is: has any one of you found a formula for how much crit I gain per intellect on various levels between level 1 and level 60? So in the video I just equipped something and unequipped it and looked at the difference, but does any one of you has a formula so that I don't have to do that all the time? If anybody has, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, that's it. So have a nice day.